Okay, hello everyone, and from wherever you're joining us, welcome to the 2023 Global Symposium on Leadership and Project Management. As we convene today, we stand at the crossroads of unprecedented global challenges, each demanding collaborative and transformative solutions. And our theme this year is Leadership and Project Management Innovations for Sustainable and Inclusive Change. And it is a testament to our collective commitment. It emphasizes that more than ever, we need to be forward-thinking, inclusive, and sustainability-driven in our leadership and project undertakings. It's also about understanding that every decision we make today has ripple effects that shape the future of our societies and the world at large. And as we delve into conversations, discussions, and insights over the next few days, we're privileged to have amongst us someone who embodies the very essence of our theme. It is a visionary who has not only spearheaded groundbreaking innovations, but has also ensured that businesses play a crucial role in building sustainable societies and are structured for long-lasting impact. Ladies and gentlemen, as a beacon of inspiration and a stalwart for sustainable change, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for this symposium, David Roberts. As accomplished business owner, consultant, and trainer, David has made remarkable strides in the corporate sphere. From his early days at the Chartered Institute of Marketing to holding executive roles in global pharmaceutical companies and leading major initiatives, David's expertise is unparalleled. His journey saw its pinnacle when he founded Cube International in 2004, establishing it as the first APMG consultancy and training accredited organization. But that's not all. David's roles as a non-executive director of the Agile Business Consortium, a chartered project professional, and a chartered management consultant underscore his dedication to the profession. His guest lectures at universities and contributions as a CMI assessor and auditor further solidify his standing as an industry titan. David, it is with immense pleasure that I welcome you as our keynote speaker this year. And the floor is yours. Please take it away.
Serhi, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I think my career just feels one that has been very challenging and very varied, and it's been nice to get a few breathing points to look back and say, well, that was good. Some things have gone well, and when they haven't, to look back and say, there's something that I need to learn. That's been the start. So thank you very much, Serhi. And ladies and gentlemen, perhaps I could have slide 2, first of all, Serhi. It's an honor to be with you either this morning, this afternoon, or this evening if you're in Asia. It's been my pleasure over the years to visit some of those parts of the world and to deliver either consulting or training in the project management spaces. So thank you all for dialing in, for joining us, and I'm certainly looking forward to the next 2 very exciting days with some great presentations coming forward on leadership and project management. I was once told that you should always start a presentation with a joke or something amusing. And I picked up this point from Euripides that said, the problem with being a leader is that you're never sure if you're being followed or chased. Maybe sometimes it's both of those things. But one of the useful things that I've been told is that you simply cannot over-communicate. So for all of those people who spend their time creating visions, or writing up their progress reports, I salute you guys. You're doing a great job. You are really making a difference in keeping the right information flowing. So let me just turn quickly to the points here about how to lead and manage projects for sustainable and inclusive change. The first point is resilience is absolutely a direction. It's not a destination, but it's something that we will always need to work at, and it's a privilege to do so. Once we can start to share our ideas about what it might take to achieve what the organization needs to do to serve itself and to serve its customers, we're moving in the right space. So a growth mindset is a great place to start your resilience journey. Take a look at Carol Dweck's book on growth mindsets. Leaders build on the milestones of past failures to inspire project teams, and never be concerned about developing a story about a past failure to inspire other teams. It really works because you're reaching out to the people that you're working with. And finally, achieving future success by overcoming uncertainty is about purpose and flexibility. So that's the process, the development process that you'll be going through with the people who are part of your leadership teams and with others. And maybe another important point is try to make the journey fun. So life is not about how fast you can run or how high you can climb, but how well you bounce. It's one of those things we learn when we're children, and it carries right through to today. Perhaps I could take the next slide, Serhi. A number of people over the years have inspired me to think about how I do things better. When I was being told that I did not communicate enough as a project manager, or the vision was always changing. Two of these people I'd like to bring to your attention today. So many of you will have seen or read or heard Dan Pink's work on motivational theory. He focuses very much on autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And for some of you, you might be thinking, well, do you know what? In my business, I'm really not quite sure how much autonomy is available, whether I can achieve mastery, and the purpose seems to change. But as a leader, if you can create the environment for self-managed teams, many of those things will become available. And as a result of that, we move to our second area. You will be developing energy within your project team. If you cannot do that, look out for the signs of if you like, of a lack of energy within these spaces, because we all need energy to deal with managing projects for sustainable and inclusive change. We need double the energy because we have to manage today's work and tomorrow's work at the same time. So just pick up a copy of The End of Burnout. Notice exhaustion, cynicism, and ineffectiveness, or feelings of ineffectiveness, are markers of people feeling burnt out. Our job as leaders is to try to enable them to overcome that, to move to a sense of positive energy in themselves and those around them. So in this keynote, I want to answer the question, how should leaders and project teams respond to the many impacts on their businesses, their suppliers, their markets, to make their organizations successful today and resilient into the future? Maybe I could take the next slide, Serhi. Now, it's not so long ago, after working for nearly 20 years in our own organization, consulting and teaching project management around the world, that after dealing with financial crises, supplier fractures, and overcoming them and continually trying to reinvent ourselves, we were hit with the pandemic. We were all hit with the pandemic. What were we going to do? Our business was face-to-face. It's very difficult to deliver face-to-face training or consulting in a pandemic. And many of our customers were not ready for new ways of working. So at this time, 5 of us got together from different countries, different professional backgrounds, to put our heads together to decide what would be a great way of managing an organization in what was becoming a future environment, something that we were starting to see, this low-touch economy, which we would need to master. we came to the view that a new way of reimagining our organization was to think about 5 domains: principles, resilience foundations, a progress cycle, roles that would focus on building resilience, and a new culture. We called that our PACE culture. And so these are the building blocks upon which we started to think about a new framework for managing our company. Serhi, can I move to the next slide, please? Brilliant. Thank you so much. So what you have in front of you now then is the result of many debates, many models that did not make it to the publishers, many different ideas, many internal battles, but eventually we got to the point of capturing how we would put together these 5 domains. And you can see, and I'm keen to show you here, the purpose of these 5 elements. So in terms of principles, these are the things that the organization holds dear, the whole reason that for its being. We called that the enduring enterprise. As I've just mentioned, we would need professionals committed to resilience. We called that professional practice. And there were 3 parts at the center of this work: those to do with resilience foundations, and those to do with energizing people, and those to do with delivering more value. So resilience foundations, a PACE culture, and a progress cycle form the basis of, or the core of our resilience framework. These are our ideas which we worked through, and eventually, once we had agreement, we could start to add flesh on the bones. And so, Serhi, I wondered if we could take a look at how we did that. What we were trying to do by adding flesh onto the bones was to put together a configurable framework for business resilience, something that would help organizations manage themselves, whatever the weather, whatever the VUCA conditions that were outside. In this diagram, I've just highlighted our core 848 model, the bits at the middle that would be sandwiched and held together like a magnetic force between our people in roles and the principles that the organization holds dear. What you see here are, in the 848 design, are a series of best practices, ways that the organization has found it can really make progress, things that it's worked on, invested in, and tried to do as well as it can. So we have best practices and we have tools in all of these areas. What we wanted this model to do was to be able to be a check sheet, something that we would hold up to the organization and for the leaders to say, how are each of these areas contributing to our resilience? Now, we won't have time in this brief session to talk about this. I know that Serhi and Sheila, and indeed myself, are looking forward to the workshop sessions in which we'll be able to talk about this in more detail and give some practical ways of implementing it. But what I want you to see is that we are starting to think about how could we make sure that the task of thinking about the organization, how it will become more resilient, could be held within 5 domains that we could remember: our principles, the resilience foundations, a PACE culture, progress cycle, and the roles associated with it. Let me turn to a pre-pandemic situation to give you an insight into what we thought was a baseline before the VUCA conditions had really set in. So Serhi, can I take the next slide, please? So in this session, I'd like to pick up on the work that went on at PepsiCo in the mid-noughties. And in fact, I'm going to talk to an approach, if you like, a business strategy, performance with purpose, that Indra Noory introduced at PepsiCo in trying to take this organization forward. We may all look back to 2006 and think to ourselves, that was a lovely, stable time when things weren't too difficult, but it didn't feel like that in 2006, did it? For those of us who can remember. Let me just pick up on what she had to say. I think we'll find there's a great resonance with some of the things we're doing today. When I was named CEO in 2006, I was determined to run PepsiCo so that it would both deliver good short-term performance and thrive in the long term. Years after I'd gone, the company was already in good shape, but I dreamed of creating a defining corporation, proud of its roots, yet global, nimble, and responsible in shifting times. It's already looking pretty good, isn't it? That's what we're here for. For 6 months, I quietly read all I could about big societal trends in the consumer sector, particularly food and beverage. I walked the market, observing customers in action. I pored over data and employee feedback and external noise in our industry and categories. And I thought deeply about duties and responsibilities of public organizations. From all this, a vision of Pepsi emerged, and I called that vision performance with purpose. The goal was to deliver great financial returns, as we always had, but there were 3 new imperatives: to nourish humanity and the communities in which we live, to replenish our environment, and to cherish our people. My motivation was wholly to future-proof the organization, to de-risk it for the benefit of everyone, shareholders, employees, communities, and build something that would be truly lasting for decades to come. And it worked. In the 12 years as CEO, I managed to get total shareholder return up 149%. Dividends grew at 10% a year, and net revenue grew by 8%. And then if we look at the products, we cut salt, we cut fat and sugar of soda in our chips, and we added healthful brands and products with a lowered amount of water that would be needed by 40%. Could I just quickly go to the next slide, Serhi? So in that moment then, we can see that it was not only the internal objectives of the organization that were being achieved. If we look at these 3 pillars of ESG, we can see that the environmental, the social, the governance goals were also being achieved. So, in summary, let me just quickly say, performance with purpose, she tells us, was not easy. It was not easy to implement, and it was not easy to carry through. There were tough moments, but at the end of it, success had been achieved. So let me just recount those quickly. Improving investor share price, dividends each year, and revenues, all positive territory. A new R&D facility and design studios that won awards, and success in creating healthier products and sustainable production. So by maintaining this clear vision, this vision of progress with purpose, all these objectives were achieved. So before these terribly VUCA conditions, we could see that we had some great leaders who were able to deliver. Serhi, I wonder if I could have the next slide. Oh dear. Oh dear. There's a lot going on here, and some of it looks truly challenging. Even the good stuff, the AI, looks truly challenging. So we're moving forward to 2023. A lot had happened since those days of the PepsiCo story. The rise of Asian economies, bigger trading blocs, many a financial crisis, the telecommunications revolution, ongoing wars and natural disasters, and of course, the pandemic that I've already mentioned. Today, the situations faced by our organizational leaders are often referred to as VUCA conditions. That is, volatile, uncertain, complex, or ambiguous situations, things that make it even more challenging for leaders and project managers to succeed. And let me tell you a quick anecdote here, but in my own experience, I've worked with teams where project managers have felt they simply cannot carry on. They've written suicide notes. All sorts of things have happened because the complexity of their environment was simply getting away from them. That's why we produced this resilience framework. 5 domains, something you can remember, something to hold on to. Maybe I could take the next slide, Sahi. For those who didn't have a resilience framework, many organizations look to business continuity plans. But what did we find out? Unfortunately, in many instances, more than half, in fact, they were simply not enough. There were continuity plans in North America and in Europe and elsewhere. But what we found out is that these continuity plans in many instances were focused on a situation that had passed. True business resilience is a hedge against continued volatility, building a competitive advantage in an uncertain world. So there is more resilience than bouncing back. Could I have the next slide, please, Sahi? Yes, there's quite a bit more. What we really need to think about is bouncing forward. There's a great BCG study that highlights 4 leadership practices to realize competitive advantage. And one of the stories to pick up in this piece is that what organizations do in challenging times can account for 30% of a company's long run relative total shareholder returns. So they're very important times, and you need sometimes when everything is moving around you, it's rather like being, in very turbulent times on the seas. You need to have a clear compass of where you're going. That's why we've created this resilience framework, to enable people just to remember something that they can then start to work through. But ultimately, the analysis identified 4 areas that would be of importance. Anticipation, and for us that is recognition of threats and preparing in advance to take advantage of them. Winning organizations expect there to be reverses in markets, and they plan to take advantage of when they happen. Cushioning, withstanding the initial shock. Many organizations have recourse to finance in difficult times, or they've built up reserves in good times, as in the Pepsi story. But whatever it is, we need to make sure we know where that recourse will be. That's what gives us confidence that we will be able to take on more than just today's work. We'll be able to deal with the resilience agenda of tomorrow. Adaptation, absolutely. Responding at pace, quickly identifying actions, restoring operations, and introducing the next new products, services, practices, processes that are going to make our organization even more competitive. And finally, shaping industry. Well, perhaps this message is very much about building partnerships, networking. We see that actually networking is one of those new business models we'll pick up on a little bit later. But it's not just enough to lead inside our organizations. We've got to lead at a wider level within the industry amongst influencers. So just to repeat, business resilience is more than bouncing back. It's in fact bouncing forward. Serhi, can I pick up? Thank you. So maybe I need a glass of water at this point before we talk about Toys R Us. Many of us will remember Toys R Us. Many of us will remember spending hours toiling around with our children. It was a big feature of many families' lives. It's not a big feature today. So what is it? What's separated the clearly able and hardworking employees, leaders within Toys R Us from some of the other organizations that were able to make it? One way of looking at Toys R Us is to think of them as a bricks and mortar company struggling to compete against the more adaptable and agile competition. Maybe this is a good moment then to change our focus and say, what about that good and agile, those good and agile organizations? Serhi, perhaps I could have the next slide to look at those organizations which have stayed relevant, anticipated trends, and embraced innovation. So if we have a look, I've just captured here 4 organizations with which I thought you might have some familiarity. Let's start with Amazon. There's a company that in my own organization we have worked with in Europe, in North America. Who could have foreseen in 1994, when Jeff Bezos started the online bookstore in his garage in Seattle, his idea would go on to become the largest internet retailer in the world? Amazon has certainly taken the world by storm. And it all started by offering the Earth's biggest bookstore. But since then, the tech giant has definitively changed the way we consume. Whatever it is, fresh food online, it's done. Same day delivery, well, we can deliver it. So here is an organization that seems to have morphed towards today's customer. What they've done is to redefine convenience. And they've done that in such a way that shareholders are highlighting a relentless focus to obsess over customers and the desire to make bold rather than timid decisions. So other leaders look around at Amazon and say, well, goodness, how did they do this? It's worth noting that persistence was part of that story. Okay, it's not an overnight sensation. It's an ongoing, persistent commitment to the principles that they held dear. Netflix is another one. Founded in 1997 by Reed Hastings, so a similar time period. Started life mailing DVDs to customers. But now, with 109 million subscribers worldwide, it's hard to imagine not watching a video on demand. What a change. And throughout the whole of this time, the organization was always committed to the idea of streaming movies over the internet, direct into home. It took time, 10 years of experimenting with how he could do it, but ultimately this idea has prevailed. So undoubtedly there's another way in which, by getting closer to customers and utilizing technology, they have changed the way in which consumption is taking place. So some people, with the right support, the right commitment, they've really changed the ways that things happen. But other organizations have shown persistence and resilience in bouncing back. It's worth taking a look at those. Let's take a quick look at Kodak. I'm sure we can all remember the Kodak Instamatic camera and those Kodak moments. But by 2013, the company was to file for bankruptcy as camera film was rendered obsolete by digital photography. So how would that organization now be rising phoenix-like from the ashes? In January, Kodak's share price on the New York Stock Exchange more than doubled. The rise came off the back of announcing its own launching of a cryptocurrency called Kodak Coin. It was aimed at photographers. So Kodak Coin forms part of a wider blockchain platform committed to protecting photographers and helping them control their image rights. It's about residual income. It's about new ways of working for photographers and other professionals. And it's helping them do that. So by adopting a proactive approach to new technology, that Kodak moment could be on its way back. Finally today, let's have a look at Lego. I don't know if any of you here had Lego as children, bought it for your children, but it's been around for many a year. In fact, before most of us were born. Started with wooden blocks, then it ended up with plastic modules that we would assemble. Ultimately, some great ideas. Many of us have built so many things with Lego component parts. But by 2003, the organization, by trying to ward off the competition from other sources of games, such as digital work, digital technologies, almost hit bankruptcy by over-innovating and maybe not selecting those right things. Lego exhausted too many options in a market saturated with new technology. But eventually, they discovered a way forwards. It would be to revitalize and reignite its original products through collaboration. Remember we said about networks and collaboration with the likes of Harry Potter, Star Wars, and so forth. And eventually they had the idea of modeling things that were very, very much present in the media. So by taking time to see where and why it went wrong, Lego created a measured strategy to fix its problems. So here we have 4 examples of resilience, a persistent leadership approach. They did not always get it right. It certainly didn't happen quickly, but what they did was to maintain an approach. And you might ask yourself the question, how did they do it? How did they manage to maintain this? We're going to let that come out on the next few slides. So Serhi, perhaps I could just have a look. Now, just to recap for a moment. All of those of you who are working as project leaders or in project teams or working in organizations that are organized as project teams would no doubt be familiar with the pulse of the profession. And in 2021, they created a great paper called Beyond Agility, Flex to the Future. It was a paper that looked at many different sectors, but I just picked out 3 here. What was happening globally in government, in IT, and financial services. as somewhat leading indicators of which organizations were involved in digital transformation, business strategy, and organizational adaptability. What did we see? What did we see in this case? What we could see is that digital transformation, developing new business strategies, improving organizational agility, in all of these cases, organizations would need to draw down those contingency reserves to implement plans at pace, whilst preventing the buildup of losses. In other words, it was something of a race against time, but they need to win that race. Adapting change requires a clear vision and, as I've mentioned already, great organizational energy. There have been gurus in the past. Think of Simon Majaro with Think Local and Act Global. It was very much a progressive approach to marketing success before the digital technologies, before deregulation and disinformation created the disruptive market confusion we see around us today. For many organizations, their future remained blurred by competing political policies and technologies, which restrain economic progress and generate insecurity. Becoming truly responsive, truly resilient, requires organizational leaders to think in ways which benefit their organizations and the societies that support them. So the key question here is how to achieve this. If we can do this, we can become more sustainable and more resilient. Partnership working becomes more significant and boundaries more fluid. The PMI research on gymnastic organizations gives us a good insight in terms of both the barriers and the benefits to becoming flexible into the future, organizations are acting in a way that is just beyond agile project management. So these are organizations that were going to be responsive and willing to embrace big change. Ambitions of people in countries around the world, they recognize, are still increasing, as is the political challenge of beating them. Paramount to doing this is sustained progress in our living places, wherever we live, in towns or cities, whatever our jobs, green energy, farming, digital networks, transporting or traveling. The pressure on leadership teams to clarify their visions, engage partners, invest in new technologies, select creative solutions, make bold decisions and implement them is ever increasing. A quick word about how would they create the space to do this? For so many organizations, as in our example of Toys R Us, they were trapped into a bricks and mortar economy, old ways of working. What was needed here are new ways of working, new business models. Let me give you a quote from Bill Gates on network marketing. The company's products, regulations, people, and overall integrity within the network marketing industry have all advanced. And much as the franchising industry evolved from its early shady practices, more and more people are coming around to see that network marketing is a credible business model. So leaders will need to innovate new business models. And in a new era, revival of pre-pandemic brands can happen with new business models. We're seeing that in the Kodak and the Lego examples. And what they're looking to do is to find those approaches that are both more healthy and support balanced lifestyles. Serhi, could I have the next slide, please? Another way of putting this is to simply say that organizations are looking to thrive rather than survive. So to do this, we need to manage the past as well as the future, to manage down costs which are no longer relevant, and to build up new ways of working. It requires consideration of business risk and the ability to make decisions at pace. In our publication on business resilience, we very much talk about the right pace. Not everything has to be yesterday. Everything has to be fast paced. We need to work at the right pace for the various parts of our business and our shareholders and our customers and our investors. Let's consider why some small businesses have been able to succeed where others have failed. Just in brief, the first thing is to take calculated risks. Many of you may know that it's something of a common myth that entrepreneurs are big risk takers. They're not. In fact, entrepreneurs generally avoid risk wherever possible. What they do is to measure them. They take calculated risks when developing new products or entering or exiting new markets, or changing their products or forming partnerships. Successful entrepreneurs tend to take risks in ways that limit their potential losses, and open risk-taking generally is not a productive way forwards. They look before they leap. And some other points. Investing in sales and marketing. Well, how do you do that? Well, one way is you take away the costs of bricks and mortar unless they're really justified. Or you ask yourself, is this really our core business? Do we need to look at outsourcing the things that others do better? We've done it. We've done it as a small training and consultancy business. We've still made those moves. The result is usually an increase in market share and improved customer loyalty at competitors' expense. And minimally, it's survival. Embracing change. So we see the technologies of today. We need to make sure that we are part of it. And acting fast. As I've mentioned to you already, our approach has been very much around measuring the opportunities, measuring the risks, and then moving forward at the right pace. It's also important to listen to customers. Listening to customers is key. Successful companies listen to their employees, their customers, their partners, and even their competitors. They are good at thinking big, but they pay attention to housekeeping, to employee morale, to paying invoice on time, to service, marketing, and training. So the bottom line here is, even the best and bravest entrepreneurs need to find ways to mitigate the damage from the risks that they take. If you can do this, you may find it's possible to turn risks to advantages instead of liabilities. So certainly, let me just come then to some forward-looking remarks on where we're going now. So, in thinking about this overall approach to business resilience in the face of uncertainty, the leaders and project managers, I'd like to conclude with some comments about the many brilliant sessions which I know we have coming over the next 2 days. Learning great findings over the next 2 days will provide many opportunities to take advantage, to learn how to take advantage of VUCA conditions, turning threats into opportunities and creating more resilient organizations. But just remember, it's great fun to learn, but when you are hit with so much new information, as in VUCA situations, people have studied learning and forgetting before. 50% of all new information, we can lose that in a day, and 90% within a week. So we need to find ways of practicing what we do. That's why we have workshop sessions in the symposium, where templates are available to practice what we're doing and etch those ideas into our memory. So could I have the final slide? So, in sum, business resilience in the face of uncertainty is about looking to bounce forwards. Business resilience is critical to the survival of organizations, and it's even more critical in uncertain times. It enables better decision-making by combining rational judgment with the emotional perceptions and experience of those around us. Remember that listening agenda. Third point, we have a progress cycle. What is it for? It's all about adding value to organizations that are already committed to business agility. So business resilience, it's a catalyst for progress, and it should be complementary to all those things you've been doing in the past. Changing out the things that are the best practices, the tools that are not quite working, and introducing the new. Business resilience is about inspiring new leadership styles, recognizing the importance of bold decisions, things that will make a difference. We've also seen that new roles are starting to appear in organizations, like the Chief Resilience Officer. The difference is they're not looking at business continuity anymore. They are looking at a resilient business. And finally, should we do this? Well, every organization needs to be sustainable, needs to become a sustainable enterprise. So, hey, thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure that I'm going to hand back to the symposium team to learn and look about what follows next.
David, thank you so much for this really enlightening talk. I think, now it's over to Jacques, who's going to be explaining to you all the technicalities of it all.
This is fantastic. A lot of important, relevant information in your speech, David, and thank you for taking time to be with us this morning. So I'd like to remind everyone that we're going to have concurrent sessions running at 10:15 a.m. So you will use the link you receive via email upon registering through the Zoom link you receive. So take a look at our schedule on the symposium website. We're going to post actually in the chat for you if you need that. So that's great. So now the floor is open for questions. Do you have any questions for David? You can post your questions in the chat, or you can just, raise a hand and we will give you the opportunity to speak. We have another 10 minutes to interact. Questions? Any questions for David?
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
About the process. So, David, you were talking, giving us all these examples of these wonderful companies that effectively reinvented themselves in trying to battle with those crisis events. But that sounds quite, not abstract, but quite high level. Are there any particular ways to implement the approach that you described at the shop floor, effectively, when you run initiatives, when you run specific projects at a team level or maybe at the divisional level? Is there any practical stuff that people could take away and just do?
Well, I'm hoping, Serhi, that in the business resilience workshop, that the template that follows tomorrow, that some of the ideas around best practices and tools will enable everybody here to literally have a go making an organization more resilient. So it's by changing those things, those elements inside the 5 domains, that organizations can start to move forward. The business resilience framework is absolutely about building on what people have achieved in the hard work that they've done in the years past, but recognizing that sentimentality to past achievements will not necessarily take you forwards. So take a look at those sessions, be bold in the way that you approach it, remember the importance of a commitment to continual innovation. You make improvements at the pace that is possible. You will need some reserves, some recourse to support behind you, because what we know is that financial reserves, the energy of your people, and a roadmap, maybe this business resilience framework can be a roadmap, will really help those leaders to communicate what's needed and to deliver.
So can this just not be part of your risk management strategy?
I think there are real challenges with that we need to move beyond just risk management, don't we? To looking at things that are truly going to take the organization forward. So it's not just about, does this represent a risk to the organization? It's about, as I gave the example in the PepsiCo example, it's about getting close to customers, as Jeff Bezos said, really trying to understand and anticipate what is it that they really want, and then trying to migrate a service towards that. That's what builds competitive advantage. You need to experiment, start small, prove the concept, and move forwards.
I don't think we have any more questions in there, so I'm just going to indulge myself and ask you something else. Speaking of, Amazon. Oh, there's a question there. So I'll give the floor to Dr. Jeffrey Thompson.
Yes, good morning, everyone. David, thank you for the fantastic presentation. It's inspirational and gave us a lot of pause to think. I was just curious, based on what you see happening around the world. I mean, 3 years ago, we saw the world embrace DEI after the murder of George Floyd. But over the past few months, I'm seeing where companies are sort of backing off from that. And I just wanted to get your thoughts as to how do you see DEI evolving going forward?
I think all I can really say there is that in thinking about the leadership team that we put together to build the business resilience framework, we absolutely were committed to diversity. So as our own organization, we had somebody from North America, from the United Kingdom, from Ukraine, from Bangladesh, from Pakistan, and they were all in different, if you like, primary business discipline. So what came out was really a blend of all these people's ideas. And truthfully, no one person thought they could have produced this. But together we produced something that maybe we were 85 or 90% happy with. And that is a big step forwards. So that for me was, if you like, bringing diversity into my own organization. We had always employed people from different countries, of course. But what we found there was that the spirit of working together was actually a catalyst for delivering progress at pace.
Thank you.
I mean, we have another couple of minutes, and so there's one question I wanted to follow up, what I said earlier, David. So you're speaking about Amazon as a good example of company basically making progress in situation where others wouldn't. But we also have evidence that some of their working practices are perhaps not something that other people would consider as shall we say, user-friendly, workforce-friendly, trying to tune up operations to the degree where not everyone can effectively, keep up, specifically the warehouse operations where literally people of certain age or who have certain physical traits, they just can't perform because these algorithms, they keep jacking up the playing, So my question here is there a particular line of trying to improve your operations to be resilient, i.e. efficient in this case, where you overstep and you become, not user-friendly, to be politically correct here?
Okay, Sophie, thank you for that question.
Can resilience backfire, in other words?
I think one of the approach that we have within our principles, which I'm sure you'll go through in the next couple of days, is the ethical implementation principle. So that is vital to us. It does not mean that when I've been working with Amazon that I've always found that in every location. I have not. Some things are really alarming. You go to work with project managers, and in some places the idea is, well, let's see how high you can jump, then we'll try to make you jump higher. We'll keep doing that. If you can't do it, we just get somebody else. Now, that is a very painful thing to observe. But let me tell you another story about Amazon. So when I was in Scottsdale at a mega warehouse, I get pulled into a training room to explain, so I get the learning of economics of scale. Let me show you how many dollars we make every time we save a second on a picking process for a product in our warehouse. And what is needed here is for those people who are going to be part of the environment to be genuinely mindful and genuinely aware of the environment they're stepping into. It's a different place. It is not for everybody. And you definitely need to have a growth mindset. You try to bring people together to bear on particular challenges. I would offer this generally from my general experience in project management and leading organizations. If you find yourself working all the hours, at work when everybody else has gone home, on your own, I would say to you, please step back, rethink how you're approaching this work. Resilience will come from bringing people around you, sharing a challenge and finding a way forwards between you in the way that we did in writing the book. Maybe that's back to the point that you raised, Jeffrey, around diversity. Let's have a look at some people with some different experiences. At that point, you'll be able to make a stronger case. So all I would say is the Amazon culture is a tough culture. It's not for everyone, but you do need the right mindset to prevail in it. Some people have, many others have not. So I think this is a situation where in some of these very challenging situations, awareness is essential to sustainability.
In other words, the growth mindset must be balanced with ethical implementation.
You're absolutely correct.
Amazing. So I'd like to remind everyone that Dr. Douglas Bauer is going to speak about going international in room 2. Now that's going to be fantastic. And if you are going to be in room 1, there is a session starting at 10:15. And so, well, it's a great pleasure to have you all here and to listen to all this information and so important, so timely. This is really fantastic. Thank you very much, David. This is fantastic. Now, do we have any other questions here in the chat?
We have one more.
Oh, how to implement budget-friendly resilience business? That's a question from John, I think. So we're going to stay. If you want, you can answer this, but we are in break time right now until 10:15.
Yeah, so
Okay.
people who are in room 2 should switch over at well before 10:15. Yeah.